You're listening to Tony Graham here on Binjang 91.5, and it's time for Tech Talk in Studio 2 with Matthew Dickerson. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Tony. Thanks for chatting to me again about everything technology related.
Yeah, well, we always have a great time when we do that, even when we're not doing this for radio. So I have to say, always enjoy the conversations.
Thank you.
Now, in 1979, Douglas Adams released a science fiction book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now, to allow people from different planets to communicate, they'll put a babble fish in their ear and it would translate automatically. So are we at the point where this idea is now reality? And you might have to explain this concept a little bit further because a lot of people wouldn't know what this is about.
Yeah,
because they're not as old as us, Matthew.
Douglas Adams was a great science fiction writer, and I particularly enjoyed his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series of books, and they had some wonderful concepts in there. And as so often happens at the moment, Tony, people create things in fiction, might be science fiction. Think of Dick Tracy with a watch, and everyone would say, oh, wouldn't that be wonderful having a watch on your arm that you could make a phone call with? It wasn't even a phone call back in those days, it was a communicator. And of course, so many of these things that we've seen that have been made up and just been almost silly at times are actually coming to fruition. In fact, I'm sure that some people in various tech companies go back looking through old magazines or comic books or novels to try and find ideas to come up with what they can actually come up with next. The Babel fish in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a fish that would eat language in terms of the idea of it. It would eat language, and then the excrement that would come out of the Babel fish was a language in your local language. So it was just a silly concept made up by Douglas Adams to allow you to communicate with people from any planet around the world as you hitchhiked around the galaxy. That idea sounds silly and it's all fanciful, but we're at the point now that our translation services are getting so good with our phones, and there's various translation apps that we can use that will try and translate real time. So you can pick up your phone, you can install a translation app or use some of the native apps that come on your phone, whether it be Android or iPhone, it doesn't really matter. But when you speak, it will translate those. And I've used those back in the old days, Tony, pre-pandemic, it's what I call the old days now. I've used some of those at different places around the world to have conversations with people in a restaurant or a taxi driver, whatever it might be, to get your message across. We're at the point now that you can actually get little buds, earbuds, different types of buds that you can put in your ears that you can use to listen to music or just listen to the radio, listen to Binjang as you're going about your day. But the translation services are good enough now that you can actually say to your phone, I want to translate live real time, put some of those buds in someone's ear so that you basically have those translating the language, and as you speak, it will continually give someone the information you're saying in another chosen language. Now, it's not perfect, it's not absolute real time, but it's certainly as good as, if not better, than having a translator there doing it live. And it always worries me when you have a real live person doing a translation. I've done it on a number of occasions, Tony. You might say something that goes for 20 or 30 seconds and the translation goes for 2 seconds. And you're thinking, are you sure you translated everything I just said in that 20 or 30 seconds? Whereas this here would be fairly much a literal translation as you went. So it is getting to that point where, again, when we can travel again, I'm keen to try this out as you travel around to different countries.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. It's an interesting idea. I think it's going to be really, really great when they find the bugs out of it, that's for sure. It's very exciting stuff.
It's about the speed, I think, is the main thing at the moment, Tony, getting the speed fast enough that you can have a conversation that doesn't have large lags in it.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Now, tomato, the humble tomato, not so humble really. They've done all sorts of genetic stuff to it, increasing the amount of chromosomes in a cell and all that sort of stuff with it. But now we're down to CRISPR-edited food to go on sale in the world. Now, that's gene editing. It's the next step up in technology to alter the way the genes are put together. So what's happening there, Matthew?
Well, CRISPR is exciting. CRISPR is often talked about in terms of humans. One of the ways that we talk about someone might have lost a finger, and to basically grow that finger back, which we can't do at the moment, one of the things I've often talked about is CRISPR. When we start to edit DNA, when we start to edit genes, that's when CRISPR gets really exciting. Now, doing that in humans is still some way down the track, but that is one of the next big breakthroughs in technology from a medical point of view. But CRISPR now has been used for a little while in doing some gene editing in terms of plants. But for the first time ever, you can now buy a food altered by CRISPR. And the tomato, as you said, is the first food. It's now gone on sale in Japan. It's a Sicilian Rouge high GABA tomato. Now, I'm not an expert on tomatoes, Tony, but GABA is something that's actually quite good to have in a tomato. It's good for us from a health perspective. If we could have more GABA in a tomato or GABA in a tomato, then that's good for us. So that's fantastic. But by using CRISPR, they've actually been able to change that so that we've got more GABA in a tomato. And one of the things that's interesting here is that we talk about genetically modified foods. And when you have genetically modified foods, it's normally when you're taking one particular plant and modifying it with another type of organism, another type of plant. And there are certain rules around the country about genetically modified plants. But when you use CRISPR to edit the genes in a plant, that actually doesn't come under the same category as a genetically modified plant. So most of these foods in most countries around the world allow you to basically sell those as normal foods. This is pretty exciting. If we can start to change the actual components of food, change what that food needs, we can solve a lot of food problems around the world for different people.
Yeah, well, this is the forefront of the new medicine, that's for sure, and has lots of questions about the ethics of it. But you could, when you're looking at medicine these days, a lot of problems that people have are genetically related, and those things are theoretically able to be altered. So what happens in that space is going to be very interesting, that's for sure.
Very interesting.
Now, a subject we've broached in different ways before, this next subject is the US Army that's looking at 3D printing concrete buildings and bridges in disaster areas. We've had, bricklaying machines, and we've had 3D printing concrete ideas before, but it sounds like they're really gearing up for this.
Yeah, and the first thing that came to my mind, Tony, is the good old Wellington Bridge. When the Wellington Bridge was knocked down infamously many, many years ago, there was one of the things that happened there, as you'd well remember, is that the Army came in and built a temporary bridge down. You had to go around from memories. You came towards the bridge, you'd go left and go down around the river, and a low-level bridge was built there. Now, that was built relatively quickly, but it still took some months before that bridge was built to temporarily get people across the Macquarie River. The idea here is that the US Army is saying you can do 3D printing now of buildings, you can 3D print bridges, but there's a lot of planning that goes into that and a lot of work that goes in, and you need some fairly sophisticated equipment to come in and do it. What the Army's now working on is we want to be able to do it having a very portable, very easy to get around piece of equipment that can go into a disaster area or go into a warfare situation and quickly print structures, bridges, whatever we might need to be able to have up and running. And so these 3D printers are designed to use local equipment that might be available, local supplies, and be able to be set up very quickly and produce something that may not be your dream home, for example, but if you need some quick barracks put up or you need some housing put up in a disaster area, the idea of this is you can actually do it in a fairly quick time frame. The whole 3D printer is designed to ship in a container, again making it easy to get out to somewhere wherever it might need to be. So if we go back to that Wellington example, if the same thing happened today, if a bridge collapsed in Wellington today, theoretically with this sort of technology, a container would be shipped out, in that would be a 3D printer. A week later, there'd be a 3D printed bridge ready for you to start using. Again, wouldn't be the final solution, wouldn't be absolutely perfect, but it would be enough to get up and going and start using in a very short time frame. And that's where we're at with this whole 3D printing concept, where it is so easy to build whatever you need to build in a short time frame, quick and easy.
Yeah, well, how good is that?
Yeah.
You're listening to Matthew Dickerson and Tech Talk on Binjang 91.5. And we'll have the next session on next week, next Tuesday. It's on every Tuesday in the mornings and afternoons. And now it's back to all the great music and information on Binjang.
Great, Tony. We'll chat again next week.